Awesome. So as I said, this is I'm Melissa, Manager of Grants and Community Engagement. Tonight, we're going to talk about what it means to be a grant reviewer for ArtsBuild. The agenda for tonight is pretty straightforward. It's going to be easygoing, pretty conversational. You're welcome to ask questions in the chat or raise your hand and we can give you an opportunity to ask that question. At the end, I'll open it up myself for folks to ask questions. So we're gonna do it in several parts. James will talk about what ArtsBuild is. A lot of you are already friends of ArtsBuild, but some of you might not know what we do each and every day. And then we'll move into talking about the grant programs that we have and what it means to be a reviewer for each of those programs. And then we'll talk about some of the logistics of being a grant reviewer with ArtsBuild. And then at the end, I'll talk about next steps and also answer any and all questions that arise. Does that feel good to everybody?
Okay.
Awesome. Okay, I'll hand it. I'm going to screen share and bring up our PowerPoint. Can everybody see this well, our PowerPoint?
Yes.
Awesome.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Let's see.
Affirmative.
Okay. So now James is ready to talk about what ArtsBuild is.
Yeah, so welcome again, everyone. And I know that many of you are familiar with ArtsBuild, but for those who are not, we are a local arts nonprofit. We've been around for 53 years here in Chattanooga and Hamilton County. Our mission is to build a stronger community through the arts, and we do that by providing funding and supports for artists, arts programs, and education initiatives here in Chattanooga and Hamilton County. So we work and support individual artists, organizations, and community groups of all types to develop arts programming and resources for our community, and also so that they can bring it back to their communities. This is actually a graphic of our main programmatic areas, and those include grant making, which is mostly what people know us for, arts education, which many of you know that we do teacher training, we support teaching artist training, and we also have a program called Imagine, where we send every child, kindergarten through 5th grade, on an arts field trip each year. And this past year, even with the pandemic and some of the challenges that caused, we were able to send around 14,000 Hamilton County school students to have an arts experience and an arts field trip. We're excited to do that again next year. And those trips are from everywhere to the Creative Discovery Museum, the Hunter Museum, sculpture fields, the Nutcracker, a play at the Chattanooga Theater Center, just lots of different experiences, even a visit to the Discovery Museum for kindergartners. We also do leadership development programs like the Holmberg Leadership Institute, which many of you have participated in. Many people don't know that we do shared services. So for the organizations that we fund, we actually have a group of consultants and vendors that ArtsBuild pays to work with the organizations and support and serve them throughout the year. And those are things like public relations, marketing, racial equity consulting, accounting assistance and consulting, a lot of the things that an organization would be burdened to pay for. Through the generosity of our donors, we're able to cover some of those costs for them. We do advocacy work as well. So we do advocate for the arts and arts funding at all different levels of government. But if you haven't, I really encourage you to visit our website, and I will put these links into the chat once I finish and you can grab them. But visit our website, check out our e-newsletter and make sure you subscribe to it. And you can also follow us on social media platforms like Facebook and Instagram. We have lots of great resources for you as well on our YouTube page, where we share recordings of everything that we do, and we'll share this one there too. And it also includes different info sessions as well. So welcome. I will say that last year we were really pleased. We were able to infuse about $2.1 million into Chattanooga Hamilton County arts sector, help as many organizations and individual artists and programs related to arts survive as possible. So we're excited to work with you, excited to get to know you even more, and just really happy to welcome you into or back into the ArtsBuild family. So thank you very much. And Melissa, I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you, James. So there are a number of grants, current grants that we'll need reviewers for. I'm going to go through each of the grants so you can get a feel for what the grant is about and what it means to be a reviewer for that. The current grants that we have are the Mission Support Grant Program, ArtsBuild's Community, that's a program through the Tennessee Arts Commission, our Cultural Connections grants, our Racial Equity grants for individual artists, and artist work. So our mission support grants are designed to support access to the arts by providing general operating funds for eligible and approved arts organizations that have year-round programming in the arts. And it is a grant that can range from $5,000 to $100,000. This is a really important grant because there's not as many grants that allow for foundational operating costs. And so this is a one right now. We have 19 mission support grantees, and hopefully in the future that will grow. You'll see one of our mission support grantees is Scenic City Clay Arts, and that's an example of one of their family workshops. So once a year, arts organizations apply for this grant. It's usually around January, we start receiving the applications. We get about 20 to 23 applications a year. It is probably the most intense review process because there's lots of money involved and organizations involved, but it's also the most fun. You're learning about major arts organizations in Chattanooga. You're getting to read about their programs and see what their future holds. You get to meet a lot of different other grant reviewers in the process. Grant reviewers, they review about 8 applications for this program. It takes about, depending on the length of the application, 30 to 45 minutes per application. And then at the end, there's a review panel that is about 3 hours where the potential grantee comes on Zoom or in person, depending on how we do it. And they will have about 10 to 15 minutes to answer any questions that reviewers have asked about their grant application, and to give feedback about those questions. And so that grant reviewers can then update any scores. I'll pause here for a second. Does anybody have any questions about mission support?
Is there a particular schedule for what time of the year those grants are applied for?
James could tell us it's usually late in the.
Yeah, I can share. So the mission support grant, since those are up to $100,000 for an organization, so they are the largest grants that we give away each year. So usually the orgs will start applying for them. They do a preliminary application in January, February-ish, and we confirm that they can apply for the funds. and then they turn in a full application like March or early April. Then we go through the decision-making process and then notify them in June that they have received the money or not. So
Second,
that's an ongoing, roughly like 6-month process.
is the grant review evaluation process electronic?
It is. It's through
Okay.
our grant program called Submit. And when you make a commitment to one of the grant programs to be a reviewer, what we do is send you the grant reviewer handbook, in which gives you all the A to Z of how to log in, register, all the things, and it's step by step of how to review. So we go through those like micro details once you're assigned to a grant program.
Can I ask how many reviewers would review the same application?
So it depends on the grant program. So in terms of mission support, it can be between 5 and 8 reviewers per application. And so it just depends on some of our larger organizations. There's more reviewers for those applications.
If we're part of that, a group of 8, say, we review them alone, and then do we come together to discuss?
So the process is you review them alone, yes, and then you score it through the Submit grant program. And then you also submit questions that you have about the grant. And then afterwards, we set up a panel review. And what that means is we have all your questions you've submitted. The potential grantee is invited to be on the Zoom. All the panelists are on the Zoom, and we ask those questions to them. Traditionally, they're provided the questions beforehand so that they can be prepared to answer them. And then after that Zoom, the panelists are welcome to go back and update their scores based on what they've heard.
Okay.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you.
How user-friendly is the Submit process? I've had a few problems with some of these things like Zap.
Yeah.
The reason I'm asking is that I know somebody who wants to apply, and that means I'll have to teach them.
Yeah, for sure. So it is, we have just transitioned to Submit, and one of the reasons we did, because it's very streamlined and user-friendly. And so I have been really doing a deep dive into it from the perspective of, let's say I'm a new reviewer and I'm not as adept in computers and programming and things like that. So I've been making note of tips and tricks. So when a reviewer comes on board, I can say, these are the ways to navigate Submit in a non-frustrating way, because sometimes technology can be frustrating, but the main reason we chose Submit is because it's very streamlined, not only in the grant application aspect, but also in the reviewer aspect. Part of my job will be supporting reviewers, getting them familiar with the system, so that it's not a barrier to participate in this process.
Thank you.
So I have two quick questions. The first is, will we receive these slides?
Yes, I will. After I will do a follow-up email with the link to this video and also the slides.
My second question quickly is, I assume each of these grants kind of have different criteria, and this one, by virtue that it's so large and encompassing, historically, if a entity has come and asked for 100,000 for the last 10 years, let's say, is there any consideration for, gee, you guys need to, start providing some of this for yourself too? I mean, or is there Is it just about the numbers that they're reaching? And
So with this grant, we really focus more on like their programmatic areas of the organization,
Mhm.
the quality, their advancement of like diversity and equity and access goals that they've set. And we have 3 tiers of grant requests and organizations, which is based on their budget. Because one thing with this is they cannot ask for more than 10% of their annual expenses. So it kind of puts them into a certain category. So they can't ask for more than 100,000, and it has to align with like 10% of their expenses. So it really kind of evens out in the end. What we're really considering moving to, and this will be new, is we'll have fully fund, partially fund, or don't fund as the major decisions that you all would make for this grant after reading the application and asking your questions and meeting with the grantee or the person who's asking for the funding. We do have a separate committee that's kind of like we call it an allocations committee that takes the money that we've raised each year and then work based on your recommendations to allocate the money to the different groups.
Awesome. Thank you, James.
Thank you.
Another one of our grants is the Community Cultural Connections Grant. It strives to make arts and culture more accessible to underserved populations in Hamilton County, inclusive of geographic area, ethnicity, age, and individuals with disabilities. This is a really great grant. It's a dynamic grant. And what I mean by that is it is a very accessible grant for folks who aren't used to writing grants. Not everybody is a grant writer. It's a great way to, for artists and arts organizations, especially emerging ones, to get their leg in on the grant process. And it is on a rolling deadline. So what that means is as long as we have funds, we keep pushing out those grant monies. And so currently what we have is a review team of 4 community members who once a month meets and reviews 5 of the applications. And the applications take maybe about 20 or so minutes to review. So it's year-round, a once-a-month commitment to come into ArtsBuild and collectively make decisions. At home, we'll have read the applications. We are considering adding a second set of CCC reviewers to balance out the workload of reviewing applications each month. And this is one obvious dad is a theater company in Chattanooga who is a recent CCC grant recipient. And if you haven't seen their show at UTC, this is the last weekend. I saw it last weekend. It was phenomenal. So I really do suggest y'all go see that. So Artsfield is considered a designated agency for Tennessee Arts Commission. What that means is we help manage one of their grant programs, and it's called ArtsBuild's Communities. And it's opening up art access, enhancing arts and culture throughout Chattanooga. It does require that an organization be a 501c3. The nuts and bolts of being a grant reviewer for this program is based on Tennessee Arts Commission's protocols. And so we follow all their how they do their grant review process and submissions and things like that. It's very standardized and straightforward. This is the current one. We're about to start reviewing applications for ABC grants at the end of July. And currently I do have that panel review filled, but that will come back around next spring to start reviewing and making decisions on the ABC. This year, we got 18 applications. So each reviewer reviews those applications, all 18. It does take up to 30 minutes, give or take, to do each application. And then you sit on a review panel that's run by myself and Tennessee Arts Commission staff. And so the kind of the timeline for this one for reviewers is July and early August. And then they receive their grant award notification by the end of August. Oh, and I should tell you about this. And then one of the recent ABC grant recipients was COPAC, or Barking. Many of us know them as Barking Legs. And if you're going to be around this Saturday, they're premiering their dance film at the theater, and it's July 16th. It's going to be a great evening to see their film and get, understand more fully what it meant to be an ABC grant recipient. Another grant we're about to launch on August 1st is a Regia grant. It's our racial equity grant for individual artists. And this program strives to increase arts and culture in our community, produced by diverse artists that are reflective of our community. We recognized at one point that only about 20% of our funding was going to BIPOC artists or BIPOC-led arts organizations. And we have made a commitment as an organization to increase the amount of funding that goes towards BIPOC artists and arts organizations. The current round of Regia grant monies will go to community members who identify as Native American, Pacific Islander, and Asian American. And we look forward to getting those grants in our inboxes and read what those artists are hoping to do in the 2023 year. We get about 15 applications for this program, and it takes about 30 minutes for it. And the mural you see here is by the artist Seven. It's on the corner of Holtzclaw and Main. If you haven't seen it yet, I suggest going by. I actually parked and went and looked at it up close. It's amazing. And so he was a recipient of the 2021 Regia Grant Award, and then in 2020, and then 2021, oh, sorry, I'm messing up all my dates. It's 2021. And then 2022 is our Latinx Hispanic artists are currently going through their grant funding right now. Another grant program we have is Artist Works, and it's for individual artists, artist studios, nonprofit arts organizations to produce artworks for public spaces. It's an economic stimulus grant to just get arts back in work, and the picture here is of a mural at La Paz that Alex Losa did under Artist Work, an Artist Work grant. We get an average of 25 applications for this one, and each grant reviewer reviews approximately 10 of them. It takes about 30 to 45 minutes per application. And then we have a grant panel as well for that one. Any questions thus far about the grants I've talked about?
Are these various applications online on your website that we could look at?
They are, as we're launching them on our new grant system, we are uploading them in real time. So right now, what you would find on our website is the CCC grant, the Community Cultural Connections grant. The next one we'll make live is the Regia grant on August 1st. And so, yeah, you could go ahead and look at the CCC one and kind of get a feel for what it means to fill out an application. One of the reasons we like this program is because there's several ways you can apply. You can do it typed, or you can do it as a video recording. Hopefully that'll make it more accessible to more people to apply. Any other?
I was
Yeah.
just gonna add something. I'm gonna share our program and engagement map in the chat. So a lot of the grants that we offer, especially the CCC grants, we are really working to prioritize areas of the county and neighborhoods in the city where ArtsBuild has traditionally not done a lot of work and not put a lot of resources. So we do use this map, and the map, you can play around with it, but it has 6 years of participation in grant making data in it. And what we do is we do share that with grantees and encourage them to like prioritize some of the areas where we have not had a lot of engagement on the map, because we do serve all of Chattanooga and all of Hamilton County, but we acknowledge as an organization we've been lax in reaching some of the neighborhoods in Chattanooga and also some of the more rural or outlying areas of the county.
Yes, thank you, James. Any other grant questions before I move forward?
Melissa, I was going to ask the applicants who apply for these, whether individual or organization, are any of them from outside of Hamilton County?
No, our grants are for artists and arts organizations in Hamilton County. I know occasionally we might expand beyond, but those would be very unique programming. So most of our funding is micro-focused in Hamilton County.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. So we'll go on to just some kind of some general grant reviewer qualifications. You know, really the greatest qualification to being a grant reviewer is competence and understanding or appreciation of community arts. And really, I emphasize appreciation of community arts, that you are or you strive to be a patron of arts and culture in Hamilton County, and you have an appreciation for that. You know, other aspects that we look for in a reviewer is, you know, the ability to make mature judgment, a balanced perspective, objectivity, the ability to work effectively in groups, commitment to review the grants, good communication skills, personal integrity to ensure the confidentiality of applications and discussions, and the avoidance of real or apparent conflicts of interest. And I'll talk about conflicts of interest. So I know when I moved here, I thought, oh, Chattanooga is a huge city. No one will know me. I will, you know, I'll be anonymous, right? And then I quickly learned that Chattanooga is just a web of intersection. And so a grant reviewer will occasionally come up with a conflict of interest, whether they're on the board of one of the applications that's applying, or they're at the head of the organization, or they have a relationship with the applicant where they don't feel like they can be objective. And all you have to do is say, hey, for this particular application, I have a conflict of interest. It doesn't knock you out from being a grant reviewer for that program. We just note that one application, you have a conflict, and then you get to review all the other applications, no problem. Any questions about qualifications or thoughts about it? We mentioned this before, so each grant has grant guidelines, and it not only guides applicants when they're applying, but it guides reviewers when they're reviewing. And so it talks about the theme of the grant, the component parts, the requirements of the grants, the purpose of the grant, what applicants have to do to satisfy the grant. And so you're given a roadmap for scoring. And so it is a very rote process where you just kind of check the boxes. Did they do this? Did they do that? Did they do that? And then you can score based on the guidelines. And when you're assigned a grant program, I will send you a link to that specific guideline so you can review it and ask any questions. Any questions about guidelines before I skip forward?
Yes,
please.
I'm looking at one of the grant guidelines, and is there an additional evaluation sheet with scoring numbers that the grant
Yes.
reviewer will use? Okay.
Yes, so embedded in the submit system, it will trigger you to score based on criteria. So the guidelines are more kind of like the foundational overview, and then it'll get more micro within the submit system where you're like, there's categories and you'll like, let's say it's like 1 to 5 and you do 5, you do 4 and 3, and then it'll tally up. Some of our grants will, like our CCC doesn't have numerical scoring. What we do for that one is we read the applications, or our review panel reads the applications, notes questions that they have, and then they get their questions answered, and then they decide to fund fully, partially, or no funding. So they don't do specific numericals, but things like our mission support grants, there are numerical guidelines for scoring those. What other questions?
How strict are y'all on people following the guidelines? Or I guess another way is, how forgiving are you for people? So if
In
they
terms
forgot
of-
to include something, like you could let them know so they could include it, or?
Yeah, you mean the grant applicant? Yeah,
Yeah.
so there's several ways we support them before they even submit. So whenever anyone submits, like let's say a CCC grant, they know and are welcome to send me an email, and I can take a broad look at it and give them suggestions before they submit. That way they're submitting a full application. Depending on the grant, we have different levels of expectations. So like our mission support grants, we have high levels of expectation because it can go up to $100,000. But for like our CCC grant, or even our Regia grant, we recognize that the community members, the artists or organizations might not have the background to write grants. And so we have a lot more grace and guidance and allow them to like revise their budget if it needs to be revised to fall within the parameters. So not only are we a granting agent, but we're a mentoring in the respect of writing grants and things of that nature.
Oh, that's nice to hear.
Yeah, and I will say too, I know that we do reviews of the applications prior. There's a deadline, we can't review it an hour before the final deadline, but our grant staff will review applications and give feedback. Our wish is that we want to give away our money. I mean, we want to support the arts. We want people to get it. So we do everything that we can to make that possible. And then like Melissa said, for many of the people, especially as we try and work to reach more and more communities that have been marginalized from arts funding before, as we reach out to them, a lot of them, it's their first time trying to apply for grant funding. So we're very supportive and do whatever we can to help them to have a successful application.
Thank you.
Any other questions about guidelines? So there are some benefits to being a grant reviewer. It gives you an opportunity to learn more about the artists in Hamilton County, the arts organizations throughout. From a art patron standpoint, you'll learn about, like I learned about Obvious Dad and had an amazing experience last weekend with my with a friend. You get to have a voice at the table. You get to help steer a ship of arts and culture. And you get to, some people take it as an opportunity to learn more about how to write a grant and what grant facilitation means and looks like. And so you could come into it like, I'm going to be a grant reviewer because I know in the next 6 months, I want to write a major grant or start the process of writing one. It gives you an opportunity to hone your constructive feedback skills, because that's part of it. You will have the opportunity to give feedback, and how to do that in a way that supports the organization or artist in a way that moves them forward. We at ArtsBuild can help with that as well. And then starting, which is really exciting because it opens up economic diversity. We're going to start compensating reviewers for their time on a grant review panel. So we're very excited about that. Any questions about being, like, the benefits of being a reviewer?
Can I add something too? So we also are planning a party for all of our reviewers on top of our rooftop deck. So
Oh,
if the other stuff didn't get, maybe let me know.
Yes, at the end of August, we are going to party for sure.
You promise.
Yes.
Since August is my birthday month, I want to be sure that we do that.
So it'll be Dr. J's birthday party then.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sounds perfect. So we'll open it up for any additional questions, and then I'll talk about next steps and things of that nature. And it doesn't have to be a question if you wanted to give feedback of what you've heard, or if you've had an experience of being a grant reviewer and wanted to share some of that with folks, we welcome that as well.
I'm assuming on the follow-up email, you'll probably be asking what we want to be involved in and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, so my follow-up email we'll have a survey, and we'll have an ask of, like, which grant program really kind of sparked you while listening in, and then that way I can start figuring out where to place people and invite people to grant panels, things like that. And I'll have the link to this recording as well, and then I'll send the PowerPoint for folks can kind of review it themselves. And then you'll have what you have here, my contact information and James's. One of the greatest ways to stay up to date with ArtsField, not only with our grants, but what's happening in the community, is to join our e-newsletter at artsfield.com. It'll give you what to do all month long in terms of arts and culture, and then what's going on at ArtsField particularly.
My name is William Smith, and I did have one comment. I work with another organization doing grant reviews, and the one comment I have is the process of evaluating and scoring an applicant and then having your questions answered will depend on that reviewer going back and making changes based on what they responded to. And if there was a process where they could answer all your questions before you get to the point of evaluating, something like that would be better. That's my only comment.
Yeah, I saw your comment, and that is so. We're always, like, soliciting feedback and getting and tweaking our grant programs, and that's something that we would need to consider for that major program. This actually was the first year that we entertained questions. So that we had to work through some kinks with that, but I agree with what you're saying, that we should receive the questions, let them be answered, and then do the final score, or do the scoring of the application.
Yeah, not for the CCC, but for, you know, the large amounts of money.
Yeah, the mission
I-
support, yeah.
Right, I think it will make a big difference.
Just kind of to follow up on that, I've had the experience of where we reviewed a grant and then later I went to that organization when they didn't meet all of the, you know, couldn't cross all the T's and dot the I's, suggesting to them, now, are we allowed or is it a conflict of interest if we go to a grantee or potential grantee that was rejected and said, this is what you could do better next time?
And
So,
that is
go ahead,
that is
Melissa.
something that we do is we do provide feedback on grants, whether they're funded or not funded or partially
Okay.
funded, so that they can grow through the process. Because our goal is, as James says, is to give away money and to support not just artists who have been around for a long time, but emerging artists, emerging arts organizations. So we definitely provide constructive feedback so that they can grow through the process and not halt their growth.
Dr. J, I'll give you an example. So we had an organization maybe a couple of years ago that did not receive ArtsField mission support funding. But what we did is we allowed them to access all of our shared services, our consultants, use all of our resources as a way for them to improve so that they could receive funding the following year, and they did receive it. So our ultimate goal is to help and just to do what we can to make sure that we're supporting the art sector in any way.
Well, I think that's so important, especially when you're trying to expand your grantee population. There, you know, there's some folk who've never done this before and who may be doing good stuff, but just, you know, have not learned how to do all the things. So, you know, I'm excited. I've signed up to potentially be a grant reviewer because first of all, I love James and what he's doing, but also the extent to which James, since he's taken over, has expanded the footprint in the community. And so I want to just kind of see us continue to do that.
Thank you, Dr. Jane. I'll send you your check after this meeting. Okay.
Just, I don't want to check, just my Snickers. You know, I'm
okay. I got a whole bowl of them.
okay. Okay.
So, any other questions?
I have one real quick one. Is there ever an instance when they have a great idea or really strong, but you know it's going to cost more than they've asked for, and there's some room, you know, let's say they ask for 20 and you know you have room to 50 or 100. You ever give them more than they ask for?
So one thing that a tactic that we do use is encouraging them to stack our grants. And when I say that, I mean, like, if we feel like a project is not going to be financially feasible with one, they can apply for multiple grants from Artsfield during a year to make it happen. So we do that a lot. And then we also help introduce and connect them to other arts funders locally and throughout the region so that they can get funding that way.
Okay.
And Barry has his hand up too.
He's muted.
I'm good. Thank you.
Thank you, Laurie. Any other questions?
Bear, you're muted.
If you put it in the chat, we might be able to answer it.
I have a question. Are you looking for grant reviewers on a rolling basis? Do you have a deadline? Should we tell other people about this?
Yeah, so So what we're doing right now is I'm kind of replenishing our grant reviewer contact book. And then as through the year, as we're about to launch a new grant, I will reach out to our contacts and say, hey, Regia is coming up. The applications are due. I think they're going to be due about mid-October. Would you be interested in being a reviewer for the month of November, more or less? And so it'll be different periods of the year where I'll just sort of send you an email and say, hey, where are you in life? Are you able to jump on this grant? This is what it means to be a grant reviewer for this one. And then next summer, we'll do the same thing, go through our current contact list, see if people are still interested, and then replenish the roster of grant reviewers. So
I would say that the only grant where you're constantly reviewing on a monthly basis would be the CCC grant, because we do keep that one open all year until the money runs out.
yes, and that's true, once a month for sure.
The other ones would just be like once a year.
Okay, any other questions before we're great on timing, just under an hour.
Sounds fine. I've reviewed grants and scholarships for the Performing Arts League. And our process is, I'm interested to, if you decide to ask me to be a reviewer, to see a more rigorous process. It's not that we're not rigorous, but we just tend to get together and hash it out ourselves. And we do have a specific pot of money that we can, but we do give grants to organizations and scholarships to individuals. And we take, so it's a little more, and the grants are, the applications are, they're pretty, even for the scholarships, we get teenagers filling out these grant forms, and it's really, they take it seriously. And they have, so what I'm saying is I'm just interested to be a part of another kind of a grant process.
Absolutely, because we'll, not only will you learn from us, but we'll learn from your experience as well. Because as James mentioned, we're always, making sure we're doing this in the most streamlined and effective way that makes sense and is equitable. So we look forward to learning from others who have been on different review panels.
I also ran a music competition, and trust me, there is nothing more brutal than a bunch of musicians evaluating an unnamed tape of an artist. They would sometimes ask me what the comments were, and I had to really do a good job of editing them.
Yeah, that I will add one other thing. So sometimes during the year, we manage projects where we have to do like a selection of a piece of art or a work of public art or a proposal related to the arts, or even hire artists through a selection process. So it could be that we would ask you to if you would want to help with that as well. That doesn't happen a lot, maybe twice a year at the most, but if you are interested, like we would reach out to this group and say, would you like to help out with that type of decision-making process too? And the people that are leaving, thank you for coming.
So along that line, do you have like best practices guidelines or materials that we can reference?
Oh, you mean as far as like selecting art? No, we fight it out and just. I mean, we really leave it up to the public and to the community. And of course, if it's something that's going to be community based, we will engage people from that community in addition to reviewers. But yeah, those can be intense and last for a long time. Yeah. There's Barry's hand again.
Okay, I'm trying. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Real quickly, I know people are wanting to go, but can you list, I know what the big grants, the mission grants are up to 100,000. Can you quickly give the amounts on the other ones?
Yes, for sure. So the Community Cultural Connections Grant, CCC, is up to 2,000. The Regia Grant is up to 10,000. And the Artist Work Grant is up to 10,000. Did I miss a grant? Oh, and the ArtsBuild community through the Tennessee Arts Commission is 3,500.
Okay. So I've got CCC up to 2,000, mission up to 100,000. What you're calling the BPOC is 10,000, arts community 3,500, and there's one more.
And the Artist Work.
Artist work. Okay, that is like public art.
Yeah, it ends in a public art, so it's up to 10,000.
Okay, good deal. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. Awesome. Well, thank you. We're very appreciative. I will send out a follow-up email as you reflect over what you hear tonight. You're welcome to shoot me an email and we can talk through it and talk further about it. And we appreciate y'all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good job.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Now I got to go to Bible study and pray that y'all get some more money.
Thank you.